Welcome back to State of the Union. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says he wants to work on bringing House Republicans back together after the conservative Freedom Caucus sharply criticized his debt ceiling deal. But after the concessions McCarthy made to get the gavel, can he keep those members who criticized the debt vote from trying to remove him as Speaker? Here with me now is a member of the Freedom Caucus, Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I want to make clear you don't vote to raise the debt limit, so you just certainly didn't vote on this deal. But I want to ask you about it in the context of the Freedom Caucus. You called the deal atrocious, and yet it passed by almost 200 votes, including a majority of Republicans. President Biden, I should say, signed the law yesterday. What does this say about the power of your colleagues in the Freedom Caucus at this moment?
Well, first, Dan, if I may, I wanted to correct something that Jamie Raskin said earlier, my colleague from Maryland. There is no MAGA group in the House that wants to make sure that we default. That's just a talking point that is unfair. There are a lot of people in the House and a lot of representatives in the House Freedom Caucus that want to make sure that we don't spend more money than we have and that we don't spend ourselves into a really bad situation. But I think the House Freedom Caucus, with a 5-vote majority in the House, still retains a lot of influence in the House. The key is that we use that influence in a way that brings conservative results. And I think that's what we tried to do with this case, and we failed. Honestly, the Speaker got Democrats to vote for this bill because the bill is, and in fact, more Democrats voted for this bill than Republicans. This bill is a Democrat bill. It is a bill that not only avoided a default, but also locked in the progressive gains that the president made in the last 2 years.
You said that Speaker McCarthy should be concerned about a motion to vacate. That's when one member can force a vote on whether to remove him from the speakership. Is that going to happen?
I don't know if a motion to vacate is going to happen right away. I do know that Speaker McCarthy has credibility issues. He promised when he was running for Speaker that we would use the 2022 baseline numbers as the appropriation numbers for this year, and then went back on that promise with this particular legislation where he promised and signed into law the 2023 numbers. So we continue to see the swamp, the folks in Washington, D.C. who want to spend more money winning, and we continue to see the folks who want to spend less money and really act responsibly losing. And so I think that Kevin McCarthy has an issue in a broader sense.
Well, what's going to determine whether you and some of your colleagues will actually use the tool, motion to vacate, effectively trying to push him out?
Well, I don't think it can be used by just a few people. I think there has to be a consensus in the conference, Republican conference, and I think there has to be I applaud Kevin McCarthy for saying he wants to bring people back together again. Let's see if he does that in a way that involves spending responsibly in the future, because that's really what a lot of us have to see if he's going to regain credibility.
Well, he doesn't seem all that concerned about a motion to vacate. I want you to listen to what he said.
Look, everybody has the ability to do what they want. But if you think I'm going to wake up in the morning and be ever worried about that, no. It doesn't bother me. If someone thinks they have the right to do it, call the motion.
He did show strength. A majority of the House Republican Conference did vote for the deal. You just told me that it wouldn't happen unless there was consensus in the conference. Based on the vote, you're not going to get that. He's going to stay where he is because he's claiming victory.
Well, a lot of people voted for this because they have other interests that Kevin McCarthy has assured them of, but that doesn't mean that they are satisfied with his leadership, and it doesn't mean that they're happy about the fact that they had to vote for this. Nancy Pelosi, in her years and years of being Speaker, never once asked Republicans to vote for the rule, a procedural mechanism that puts the bill on the floor. Kevin McCarthy, in his first 5 months, had to ask the Democrats and received 52 votes from the Democrats to actually have the bill heard. That's really unheard of and shows weakness. And I think that's the sort of weakness that Republicans are looking at and trying to make a determination whether he won't be fit to serve.
Just one more question on this. The other side of that coin is being able to get Democrats to vote on a procedural measure that Democrats almost never vote on could be seen as a sign of strength, that he is the speaker who is a constitutional role for the entire House, not just for the conservative caucus.
Sure, it could be considered a sign of strength to those who are outside the U.S. House. When you are forced to get Democrats to vote on a bill that locks in President Biden's progressive agenda and huge spending increases, which have resulted in inflation, which have resulted in really damage to our economy, you're not strong in the view of Republicans.
I want to turn to a different topic, and that is CNN reporting that federal prosecutors obtained an audio recording of former President Trump talking about holding on to a classified document about a potential U.S. attack on Iran. That was after he left office. You're an elected official. You know that it is illegal to take classified documents, and the tape appears to show that he knew he had those documents. Do you find what President Trump did, the former president, irresponsible?
Well, as a former prosecutor for 25 years, I think it goes beyond just irresponsible. I don't know if anybody has located the document or there's a copy of the document somewhere that can show just what kind of information and classification that document had. And I don't know if anybody saw the document. I know that he was waving some paper, but I don't know anybody saw a document with a stamp on it. It wouldn't be the first time that President Trump has talked about things, and he may have been illustrating something. But it depends on what the testimony is as to how severe this is for his criminal case.
If it is found, or if they can prove it at DOJ, based on your years as a prosecutor, did he break the law and should he be charged with a crime?
Well, I am not going to second guess the prosecutors at DOJ. I work there. I have a huge amount of respect for them, and I'm sure they'll do the right thing. But without seeing the witnesses, without examining the documents, it would be irresponsible for me to suggest that he should be prosecuted or should not.
You have acknowledged more broadly that Donald Trump is facing some ethical challenges in his campaign. In addition to what we're talking about, the classified documents probe, he's under investigation for election interference in Georgia, for January 6th. He's already been indicted in New York. Would Republicans be better off with a candidate who is not facing multiple criminal investigations?
You know, it's interesting. I think that the multiple investigations and civil lawsuits that have been brought almost give this presidential candidate and former president credibility. He keeps saying that the world is against him because he's trying to make these changes.
But does he
and all of these actions that are being taken?
Sorry, forgive me, but you said give. I know what you're saying. He gives him credibility maybe with some in the electorate. But for you, Ken Buck, does he give him credibility to you?
Well, I have seen him for 4 years. I was in the House when he was president. I voted on his bills. I voted against his bills, sometimes his budgets and whatnot. So I have seen him personally. I don't look at the actions that he has taken that are being investigated as much as his role as a former president and what his policies were.
One last question. You attended an event for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis here in Washington in April. You sat next to him on the House Judiciary Committee when he was in the House. What do you think of his campaign so far? Do you have advice for him?
Yeah, I actually mentioned to him when we talked at that event in Washington, D.C., my advice is not to try to out-Trump Donald Trump. There is nobody that is that operates in the same area as Donald Trump. And I think Ron DeSantis has a strong record of accomplishment in Florida when he was dealing with COVID and some other areas. And I think those are the things that he should be running on. I have not endorsed Ron DeSantis, and I would go to events for Nikki Haley or Tim Scott or others who are friends. But I do think that Ron should do his very best to run on his strong record as governor.
Ken Buck, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on this morning.
Thank you.
President